So now the different condition we are facing up to now is that we do not just simply have this existential on-off switch anymore. We now come to envision this whole switchboard of all kinds of things we can modulate, change, delete, add to our lives, tweak it up. We can slow things down. We can minimize things, maximize things. Our emotions, our appearance, our lifespan. We can become free in so many drastic ways. Raymond Tallis, in his opening article for Philosophy Now magazine, Enhancing Humanity, said, well, that's fantastic. Because the distinctive genius of humanity is to establish an identity which lies at an ever-increasing distance from our organic nature. And so we should rejoice in the expression of human possibility in ever-advancing technology. So a certain brand of humanists are, of course, it's well aware to the transhumanists in the audience, just saying humanism is all about escaping organic nature as much as we can. Now, there are three snaky problems to this transhumanism. Even though there may be no problem with it in principle, it is quite unsettling nonetheless. So that is also why I'm taking what you can call an existential stance. I'm not against enhancement, not at all. In principle, I'm certainly for it. But there may nonetheless be significant problems. And it's strange that in the debate, there are few people who take a similar, like, muddled position. You find a lot of people who are just completely pro, a lot of people completely against. I'm pro in principle, but in practice, and even in intrinsic aspects of the enhancement project, there are lots of strange problems. So, there's a snake pit problem, you can say. How to choose which way to direct our lives if so many radically divergent directions become available. If, in a sense, we lift the lid out of the snake pit that we are, because we are this evolutionary jumble of drives, and it's not very coherent. And if we can go all kinds of ways, won't we just be completely at a loss which way to turn? Maybe that we cannot really make a rational decision because we're just two inconsistent beings. And so we will lose something, at least, each way we turn. And so the second problem is how to handle this ballooning of our personal responsibility. And then the third one is how shall we continue to feel driven? So the first problem, the snake pit problem. It's an interesting cartoon here that's also used in a TED Talk by Barry Schwartz, the psychologist who wrote The Paradox, A Paradox of Choice. There's two fish there, and the one says against the other, hey, you can be whatever you want, no limits. Of course, it's in a fishbowl. But the thing Schwartz says is, it's funny because, of course, he's extremely constricted. But imagine the other thing. Imagine that really we have no set limits, no real limits that direct our lives in some way. He says that is a recipe for misery and, I suspect, disaster. I wouldn't be quite so gloomy, but this is coming from a psychologist who is seeing these very undesirable consequences happening now already, even without enhancement technologies. He's just talking about people in convenience stores or just in any kind of Walmart or whatever, and just having way too many options. You know, he wants to cook a meal. He can have hundreds of different kinds of spices and herbs, and he's not happy because he can direct his lives and his dinner in thousands of ways. He's quite unhappy about the fact that he doesn't know what to choose. He's losing time. He's grieved by it. These are pretty frivolous examples, but it also reflects on the way we now, as Western autonomous individuals, of course we can direct our own career paths, choose our mates and whatever in so many unconstricted ways. Of course it's fantastic and we wouldn't want to give it up, but we have to acknowledge the fact that intrinsically it also brings about new problems. And sometimes these problems can outweigh the desirability of the freedom in itself. So we have to make a case-by-case analysis. And a fundamental problem, of course, also that's intrinsic to this liberation that enhancement brings specifically. If we can start to tweak and modulate all kinds of feelings we have and interests we have, it might well be that we become perplexed, that we just have to face up to the fact that, for instance, some aspects of ourselves want a quite monogamous life, but of course a lot of people are at the same time often tempted to maybe start philandering here and there a bit. And if you can imagine enhancing yourselves to really go for one lifestyle or the other, you can say, all right, I've cleared myself up, I've enhanced myself, I really have the life I want to live. Yeah. But at the same time, you really may have lost a fundamental aspect of your existence. So you've gained something, but you've lost something. Then the two snake tail problems. Well, there's the explosion of responsibility, of course, and that also refers to the problems Schwartz indicates, that as individuals obtain possibilities to change their own physical appearance, ability, cognition, emotion, every suboptimal state you then find yourself in will be something you will have caused yourself. So you will be grieved by it, you will feel shamed by it, and you may be constantly active with reviewing the life choices you've made and rechecking if you are really in the most optimal condition. So there might be this inflation of managing your own freedoms that may start to outweigh the joy of being free. And I think the philosophically most curious problem, but I won't get into it too deeply here because really I've just started a 4-year research project, and I guess this should be about the end point of it. I'm only in my 4th month. Is the problem of circularity. We really discovered that we are a completely self-referencing creature. We really emerge wholly, or in theory we can, emerge wholly out of our own will. And that actually makes a strange mental shortcut occur. Because normally we have drives, passions that we respond to. We are reactive creatures. But now we find a free will that jumps ahead of our desires. And that is, I think, something that is extremely unsettling to, for instance, Michael Sandel, when he says we will have nothing to affirm or behold except our own will. When McKibben says we will become nothing, I think this is what they reference. That the fact is that we will just be so free, but we want to feel driven. And that will become disrupted. So, my conclusion, as we extract and estrange ourselves from nature, a type of second wave existentialism pops up. No longer a switch existentialism, but a switchboard existentialism. So in a sense, if we straighten ourselves out, we will in fact tear ourselves apart. And even if we enrich ourselves on a whole, nonetheless, I think we will experience fundamental senses of loss, as we will no longer be this inconsistent creature we were once. We will have gained consistency, but we will have lost something. And there will also be lots of decisional dramas, and we will, most of all, have to face up to the fact that we really are fundamentally random beings, just free-floating somewhere. And yeah, it's not an easy thing to tackle. So, in becoming who we are, I think we will hurt a lot, even if we, on a whole, find it a meaningful enterprise to enhance ourselves. And so, we will need a lot of good nursing every step of the way. We are foundationlessly free and ruthlessly responsible. One thing that is, of course, not an option, and I think most people in the audience will sympathize with this, is to engage in some kind of nature cultism. And I think that is, in fact, what a lot of people who are, for instance, against doping in sports, against aesthetic surgery, and against the more radical ideas being voiced here, that's what they're really about. They try to create a kind of nature cultish idea, and a kind of theocratic notion. That is, I think, the project of Rick Warren, when he says, if you want to find out what you should be doing with yourself, take a look at your shape. So the problem is, of course, that is just blatant self-deception, chosen for comfort, as interestingly, I believe, Michael Sandel, and I don't think I'm misreading him there, really chooses just for psychological comfort. And so we owe it to ourselves, as humanists, that we are truthful about our own condition, and that we must accept what Sartre said, are being condemned to be free. And so we are the stranger's loop in a play on Escher. This is really what we're talking about here. It's a fantastic enterprise, very interesting, but I believe we should add some emotional depth to the whole story and accept that it's just not one big good news adventure. Thank you.